What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Sit Down Saturday. We haven't done a past, present, and future in a while, so I figure we might as well do one today and might as well do one on Fanstoys because it's the one I most commonly get asked about. A couple comments and such to catch up on since last time. One, on the Legends vs. Masterpiece, a lot of people said, what about Iron Factory? You didn't mention Iron Factory. And if you watch the whole video, you'll see I mentioned Iron Factory and how I won't be mentioning Iron Factory for specific reasons for that conversation. Also, the Prime pricing video, a lot of people were saying there are colored images available now. I put a pinned comment at the top. I put in the description. I know, but when I did that video, there weren't. So relax. I got a lot of reviews coming. I also have a 4 Dummies coming on Monday covering the RC upgrade situation. So let's get into Fanstoys. The first time that we saw any product from them was an MP01 trailer. The original MP01 didn't come with a trailer, and they offered this trailer. And what's funny about it is this is long before I got into third party, but one of my best friends, Adam, became obsessed with this trailer. He wanted it so bad. He never actually got it. But it's funny how Fanstoys has been a part of how I collect for so long. But the next thing that they were going to do supposedly was a Masterpiece Soundwave. Now this is before the Takara one was released, and after the Takara one was released, they backed down from this idea and sort of abandoned it and let it go. This becomes, I think, a bit of a theme throughout their career, and we'll get back to it, but I think this still could have been successful at the time. But what was phenomenally successful was their Quake Wave. This thing came out swinging like a German geneticist blended the DNA of Rocky Balboa, Muhammad Ali, Mike Tyson, and Floyd Mayweather. This piece, in my opinion, is historic. It's the first third-party piece that I remember that clearly felt defined as a masterpiece. The price tag was also more significant than what we had seen in third-party at the time, and that made people hesitant at first to jump in. This was during the third-party era of, is it going to be good? Is it going to be trash? Is it going to fall apart? Is it going to break? Is it going to be too fragile to transform? Etc., etc., etc. Those are things that we used to have to always ask ourselves. This came out during that era and had the heftiest price tag that I believe we had seen at the time, which is somewhere around 150, 160, I believe, which seems laughable by some of the stuff that hits today. Now, I also was hesitant, so I didn't go in on the pre-order for Quake Wave, and it came out, and the general buzz amongst the community was game changer, and they were right. And by the time that I realized they were right, it was sold out everywhere. People were asking upwards of $800 for it on eBay. This was when you really had to get in on a pre-order for third-party stuff. People don't really realize that now because you can kind of pick and choose as you go. There's very few that are super hot that you need to jump in on. But Fanstoys is one of those companies historically, and this product was a game changer also in that regard. It had die-cast. It had that aesthetic that we used to have in the MP line, which was kind of a blend of toy and animation, tons of line work, paint, etc., etc. It was a different type of piece, and it elevated our standards for third party. There's one other thing we need to talk about Fanstoys past, and then we'll move on to all of their pieces, and that is Jetfire. They teased Jetfire very early on, and then we saw Daka Toys release Chronos. There's a supposed connection between Daka Toys and Fanstoys during that era, and the general theory is this was intended to be the Fanstoys Jetfire. It was never released, obviously, and instead we got the Daka Toys Chronos, which in hindsight may have been a bullet dodge. And it took years from that point to finally get the Fanstoys Phoenix, which while a good figure didn't really hit the mark that I wanted it to hit. However, it seems like the special edition is exactly the one I wanted to hit. Too little too late for my pockets. And now let's take a look at their releases as we go back through time.
So in typical fashion, this is going to be relatively in chronological order, but I may deviate from that just to make a point. We've already kind of touched on Quake Wave, but we did get repaints of that, including a darker one, a translucent one, and a re-release. They kind of got their money there. And rightfully so. The secondary market was making money hand over fist. And then their Dinobots started coming, which I really think was another game changer. Not as much or in the same way, but the impact was just as big, and the need or the supply and demand was possibly arguably higher. And the quality was there, and they continually improved, with the first couple kind of still finding their bearings and then started to nail it by the third and from then on out, it was pretty much a quality product. We also got repaints of them as well. They all fit little niche needs. But after that, we kind of see the Fanstoys repaint approach die off, which is another thing I continuously give them credit for. We got their Perceptor, which is a toy that often is criticized as one of their weakest releases, even by them. However, I don't really take a whole lot of issue with it, but it may be because I never really was that interested in the character, and I kind of find it more than good enough to fill that void, so to speak. They then smashed the market again with their Insecticons, their Bombshell being still to this day one of my favorite figures they've released, followed up with their Shrapnel and Kickback. Kickback being the weakest of the three, but still has one of the strongest display presences as a unit in third party today, in my opinion. Then we got their Reflector, which although the sculpt is definitely there, that was the first time I really saw weakness in a product they created. Some of the build wasn't as strong or sturdy, and some of the engineering seemed more problematic than we had seen in the past. And I could even argue that that's really what set the wheels in motion for people to start beginning to criticize their engineering from then on out, which was really only set in stone by Fanstoys Willis, which was their Hound, which once again was an incredible looking figure, and I don't plan on swapping him out with the Takara. But the engineering was also frustrating to move through. We also received their Weird Wolf, which was another issue-plagued figure for me. The robot mode engineering was way off, which I'm not used to with this company. The shoulders could barely move, the ankles could barely move. And then there was the canopy issue that seemed to be pretty widespread as well in regards to QC. Luckily, this issue was quickly erased from my memory with the beauty that was their Galvatron, which definitely was a presence over engineering piece. However, the presence was so strong it more than made up for it. Fans rejoiced as their Skyfire was finally released, and we kind of already talked about that, but that was a figure where the paint didn't seem up to the Fanstoys standard. Definitely seemed okay by most other toys, but Fanstoys has a finish that we usually expect. As fate would have it, they ended up putting that out in a limited release later on, but that's maybe another conversation for a different day. But I'll say at the very least, I found it to be frustrating. We then got what I considered to be their oddest release, which was their Spindrift. A really well done, well made, well built figure, but perhaps the furthest they've ever strayed from the animation. This upset a lot of people, of course, but for me, I kind of find the figure to look cooler than he ever looked in the cartoon, while still staying true to the overall spirit of the design, so it scratched that itch enough for me. Then we got the biggest third-party release ever, split between two releases, which I found easy on my pockets, but people found that irritating as well, which was their Terminus Giganticus, their Omega Supreme, which due to its size, wings, and presence is probably the strongest third-party display piece ever created. Couple engineering flukes along the way, but for the most part, it was up to the standard that we've come to expect from the company. We also got a repaint of this as the Guardians, which hopefully helped pad their pockets a bit in the creation of this, and since it has a place in the canon, I don't think anyone could really fault them. They followed that up with their Perfect Fusion line that I think was initially intended to be their less expensive, more affordable approach by redoing their slag, but ultimately ended up abandoning the sub-company, at least as far as signs would point. We then got Cup and Springer, which both suffer from the same issues, and both have the same great things. The great aspects were what we come to expect from Fanstoys: beautiful sculpts, great paint, good materials. The problems were the engineering, which aside from the Dinobots, Perceptor, and Quakewave have kind of been getting worse and worse, but never so singularly personified as that of Fanstoys Rouge, which I didn't transform and still haven't because the components that make up the elements of her backpack were degrading in front of my face as I was simply manipulating the figure, let alone trying to transform it. This is, in my opinion, the worst they ever got in regard to engineering for the sake of sculpt, which for me in my collection doesn't really bother me. However, for most people that like to transform their Transformers, I couldn't recommend this, which I think is the first Fanstoys product that I didn't recommend. Add that on top of the issue that I couldn't get one of the legs to move, that people mistakenly thought was because of my lack of knowledge of the figure, but it was because paint was actually gunked up inside the joint of the thigh, or hip rather, that stubbornly refused to let go. However, Dracula came out and solidified a back-to-basics approach from Fanstoys that I believe, in my humble opinion, we haven't seen since the Dinobots, which was a straightforward engineering with paint, sculpt, build, and materials. It is the epitome of what makes Fanstoys Fanstoys. And then, of course, the recently released Quietus, which I've talked about a lot recently, so I'll save you that, but it's one of the most beautiful figures in my collection. Now, what does the future hold for Fanstoys? Hopefully a Trailbreaker and Blitzwing that they've teased but never released, and in my opinion, show no sign of releasing, that I also believe is due to fear of Takara releasing official versions of, a trait that we've seen in this company in the past. We also had a tease of Scourge that never came to light that I'm not sure exactly why either. It seems like their 6-shot is going to be released any day now, and it also seems as though they're actually going to go through with their Hoodlum, which was their attempt at Hot Rod, which was actually teased around the same time as the Takara, but pushed back and back and back, maybe to not compete, or maybe because there was issues, too soon to actually tell. But I think this could have been a historic release had they gone head-to-head with Takara. I think it would have been interesting to see how the chips would fall. I also think it could have given them the confidence to move forward with the releases in the future, despite competition. They also have teased their Jabber as well as some mini bots, which gives a lot of people faith in their continuation of seeing G1 designs through, especially from the early seasons. But what has everybody stirred up as of late is their seemingly attempt at combiners. With their first releases being the Stunicons and Aerial bots, many people are excited about what possibilities that gives collectors of third-party Masterpiece Transformers, as well as what possibilities could come in the future with possible releases of perhaps less popular or even more obscure combiners that could come in the future.
Now, throughout their journey of releases, they have obviously had hits and they have had a few misses. Their misses, however, aren't as far from the mark as a lot of other companies. That, alongside with their presence, paint, sculpt, and materials, has made them one of the most dependable, reliable, and popular third-party companies in the game, to a point where when I praise them, I get labeled as a Fanstoys apologist, a Fanstoys, what do they call it when you're like, shill. I've even been said to have performed adult acts of intimacy with their designers, which I assure you, none are really true, mostly. However, when I have been critical of their pieces, I tend to get backlash the other way, to include their Rouge, which started a stampede of wildebeest over my Mufasa reputation. But why is that? That is because Fanstoys has created, to their credit, passionate fans. And that's ultimately a positive thing, even when their knives are aimed at my throat. But that passionate fan base I also see in Takara, in SH Figuarts, in Hot Toys, in Prime One Studios. I see that same passionate devotion in those companies. Why? Because they create a quality product. Now, what does the future have in store for Fanstoys? I think Fanstoys' major challenge is reputation, and sustaining that reputation, both amongst quality, because we've seen it deteriorate, which isn't really appropriate, because they've never really been that strong in engineering, with the exception of their first few releases. Engineering has always been their weak point, while transformations are becoming smoother across the board in a lot of other companies, and also changing their reputation regarding their prolific nature. Fanstoys has a reputation of not putting stuff out. Even though in 2017 they released plenty of product, it almost became a self-fulfilling prophecy where we didn't see a whole lot of that in 2018. For more information regarding that, check out my Fanstoys business video. But this really is a measure of supply and demand, and they do need to feed this rabid fan base that happens to be very passionate, happy, and proud, and willing to spend their money for this product. The only way they're going to do that is by putting out releases. Now, recently, we've seen an interview conducted in a Facebook group where Fanstoys mentioned they saw Zeta as a primary competitor. That would suggest to me that much more combiners are coming, which is good. I think most of us need that. So we might just get that prolific nature back with the amount of figures they're going to have to produce. However, there's recent news regarding IP theft and China cracking down on it, which I thought about doing a video on, but it tends to get very nerdy, and I have to do a lot of research to kind of know what I'm talking about. So I want to know if that juice is worth the squeeze. If that's something you'd like to see, please also let me know. But they may have a ton of stuff lined up. We also need to see them draw a hard line in the sand and say, we are going to produce our product regardless of competition, because I think they're one of the few companies that can. Fanstoys and Mastermind Creations specifically have a strong, hardcore, devoted fan base that I believe could sustain whatever release they tried to put out, given the reputation that they currently have. Now, if that reputation changes, all bets are off, of course. But I don't think they should hold back Trailbreaker. I don't think they should hold back Blitzwing. I think Hot Rod could have came out the same month as the Takara one, and I think they would have been fine. I think that them and MMC are the only two companies that can really do it. So in closing, for the future of Fanstoys, I'd like to see them believe in their product as much as their fans do. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Until next time, take care.